Hey guys, welcome back to another Chat with Coaches. I'm here in the car. I apologize. I'm traffic in DC area is a little bit unpredictable, and sometimes you get where you got to go, and sometimes you don't. So you got to roll with the punches. Welcome back, Naheed. Thanks for joining me again, and thanks for being stable. The stable part of this this cast is Naheed, clearly, and Justice, obviously. So today we're talking about motivation, and Naheed, what do we want to talk about today with motivation?
It's still the beginning of the year, and I'll tell you one thing. I had a few goals for myself, and I was so excited in November, December. We're gonna start. It's gonna start. It's gonna be January. It'll be wonderful in January. Then January hit, and then I was like, oh, now I actually have to get the work done. Oh shit. All of a sudden, all motivation is completely sapped. And I was thinking, well, when can I procrastinate up to, right? And that's the thing that I wanted to talk to us about everybody about today, which is we it's great to have ideas when we push it out into the future. We feel excited, we feel that joy, we know, we can visualize it. But then when it comes down to actually putting boots on the ground, how do we really feel? And in truth, if you haven't done it before you waited until January, that's kind of the proof is in the pudding, right? Because you've not been motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And how do we keep our motivation up? That's really
Yeah.
it.
I know, and that's also. I mean, I tell people all the time, like it depends, right? Like when you have something like that, and this is not always, it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think when you combine it with other things, that idea of like procrastination, what's making you procrastinate on this thing, right? Now, one reason may be just that you're nervous about it, or maybe because you have so much other stuff going on, and that's okay, right? That's not a big deal. That's just reality. But one other consideration is that maybe it's not that important to you, right? And you're doing it because, well, for the wrong reasons, frankly. Maybe you're doing it because you think someone else is doing it and you want to do what they're doing, or you've heard from someone else that this is a good idea to do. There's so many reasons that we kind of traps we fall into where we're like, oh, I need to do this thing because oh, everyone else in my field is doing this, so I need to do this as well. Or I saw that person's really successful and they did this, so I need to do that as well. And that doesn't really always help us as much. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's another thing to do. And if it's not authentic with our style and who we are, then it's really not going to help us at the end of the day. It'll actually probably hurt us because it was going to attract the wrong kind of people. So
Yeah.
when you're talking about your goals, what were some of the goals that you wanted to do for yourself that you targeted?
Well, one of the things, as I've been telling our lovely listeners, is my desire to go swimming. And so I did join a club with a pool back in November. That was step one. Otherwise, it's hard to swim if you don't have a swimming pool. Could have done it in November. Could have done it in December. And then actually January came and I was like, oh, I'm traveling internationally and there's no way in hell I'm going to jeopardize that ticket by getting a positive COVID test. So, a COVID result. So I'm not going to the gym January or mid-February and I will only go in March when I return. And maybe there's a logic to it or maybe not, because I'll tell you, my mom is going to India this week and she's been going to the gym, I think 4 times a day. A week, 4 times a week.
Wow, I was gonna say 4 times a day. Your mom's like
A
legit.
gym rat. She lives there. You didn't know
Yeah,
that.
obviously, yeah, I know. No, but I mean, again, like it's what's important to you, right? Like, I mean, for you, unless was it an excuse or was it a legit concern? And either way, I think with COVID, it's tough with that one because there's so many people on different levels of the continuum because there's so much fear around that kind of thing and so many different feelings around it. It's hard to really pinpoint that one, but for some people that's just an excuse, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to jeopardize, so I'm just gonna not do this, and it's an excuse to kind of keep putting it off. I
So
know
when
for
we're
me,
back in March, you can
mhm,
ask me whether I've gone swimming. How's that? Then we'll
done,
know exactly whether it was an excuse or not.
done, because then if it was an excuse, then that means when you come back in March, something else will come up that'll be like, oh, well, I can't go to the gym now
Variant
because this, yeah,
Omicron B1, which we or two or whatever, which we already know is out there. I'm like, oh, there's a new variant, can't go.
exactly, right. I mean, for me, like I started a mastermind group for coaches this month in
Mhm.
January, and it's been going awesome. I'm loving it. But for me, it wasn't a matter of motivation. It was a matter of just like so many of the other things that were happening all at the same time. I had a presentation I did for ICF India. I had a bunch of other things that I was doing for my business to try to make sure that I was keeping things going, keeping the lights on, frankly, as things were going. And so I didn't get to creating the content for the mastermind until a couple days before the mastermind, the day before the mastermind actually. And so that was a different situation, right? Where the motivation was not so much a lack of motivation as much as just like different priorities that came up, and it just happened to be timing that worked out to prevent me doing what I need to do. But an example of where it was clearly motivation that I just didn't want to do this something was I was in a certification course a couple of years ago, and I was just procrastinating. I just wasn't doing like everything under the sun that came up. I was like, oh, this is more important. This is more important. This is more important than this certification program, even though it probably wasn't. But I kept saying, oh, I have this to do. I have this to do. And I almost would like seek out different things to do that would distract me from the certification program until finally I realized I'm like, you know what, this is just not that important to me. You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm just gonna put this off and not do it later. I'm just gonna cancel and say, listen, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, I have other priorities I need to deal with right now. Because frankly, I'm wasting their time, wasting my time and energy, and it's just not a priority for me. Now, the financial motivator, did I pay for this? Yeah, I paid for it already. But then it's like, if after paying for it, I still don't want to do it that badly, then it's really not a priority for me. So it's a question that you have to ask yourself, like, what is motivating you to do this thing to begin with? Like, what was the genesis of the idea? Why did you want to do this to begin with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. False motivators, your body, your subconscious will call you out on it. You might not be aware of it. You might not be conscious that that's what it is, but your body's going to call you out on it. It's not going to let you do anything. It is going to try to come up with every distraction under the sun. So my focus right now is when I talk to people who they feel like this is a real motivation for them, but they find that they're blocking themselves either on the process or on the mindset piece. And what I mean by that is the mindset piece simply is what a lot of people have been coming to me with this mindset that somehow I'm lazy. And when you have that blanket categorization of yourself, what that does is it is almost a carte blanche thing to say, okay, I'm lazy, that's why I don't get this done. Okay, I'm lazy, this is why I've left a whole slew of dreams that I would think are, at least 50% important to them, maybe more. But they've given themselves that excuse, that justification. People say that, oh, you're so nice. I'm like, no, it's not nice. I'm just being observant of what's going on with other people. It's not that I'm being nice or not nice, because then that gives them an out. I don't have to do it because that's not who I am. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy person, so, and we all do it, right? I tell myself, I'm a terrible cook. I'm not going to cook, actually. I'm like, eggs are fine for me.
One of my best friends used to do that. She's like, oh, I'm just a horrible cook. I'm not going to bother cooking. Mm-hmm. But guess what? She started cooking and she's actually really good at it now. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you said, it's one of those things that it's an excuse. It becomes an excuse. You say, oh, I'm just X, right?
Exactly.
I'm just this. It's an excuse. Your identity can change, right? How you define yourself can change. And what you tell yourself is what you will be, right? So if you tell yourself, I'm a shitty cook, you're going to be a shitty cook. If you tell yourself, hey, you know what? I'm not great at cooking right now. And you would sit there and say, like, the contextualize it as right now, I'm not that great. Or up until now, I've not been a good cook. That changes the way your brain processes everything. And so you can say to yourself, up until now, I haven't been really that great. Like for me, I always say I'm not a morning person. And partially because I don't want to be a morning person, right? Like I don't like getting up early. So I'm just going to say I'm not a morning person. But I could, if I wanted to, I could choose to be a morning person because I've done it. I mean, the ICF India webinar that I did was at 8:30 in the morning. Now that may not be early for some people.
I was going to say 8:30.
Extremely early for me. Okay, so early because that means I have to get up at 7:30. It for me, yes, absolutely, because I hate mornings. I'm not a morning person.
You're a night owl.
One of the reasons I got Hachi, that I love Hachi so much, is because he's not a morning dog. He doesn't wake me up in the morning to go walk. Right? We walk late at night and then we walk at like 10, 11 in the morning. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. That's another reason why I love him. But it's like, I could be if I chose to be, right? If you really wanted to,
you would do it.
Yeah, if I was motivated to do it, I would absolutely do it because I've done it before, right? I had a job, a day job that got me up in the morning early and took me to work, right? I've gotten up to do random things like for example the webinar, or like to go hiking. Sometimes I've gotten up and go see some amazing views, or to go on road trips. Like I know I've done it before, so it's not like it's impossible. It's really an excuse. And I'm owning this publicly, so now people are going to call me out on it when I tell them they're a morning person. But it's again like it's motivation, right? What gets us up and that's a phrase. What gets us up in the morning, right? For it's a phrase for a reason.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm really kind of focusing on a goal that you want to accomplish, however it is you want to accomplish, and all of a sudden you've set a time, and now's the time to take action, and you're beginning to backtrack. And the question starts with, what's that overarching belief? What's that story you tell yourself? Oh no, not today, because, for example, I'm lazy, I'm a morning person, I'm a terrible cook, whatever it happens to be. Not today, because here is my reason. And in my head, that's an excellent reason to not move forward. So if you even just start right over there and begin to identify, okay, what's that reason that is up here? And if you delve just a little bit lower, because once you get to that, you can go a little bit lower to say, okay, it has nothing to do with that. It may have something to do with something else. But the story we tell ourselves is the same thing. And so you don't really uncover, is that really true? Is that really the real reason that I don't want to do it, right? And that's key, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to motivate yourself to move forward if you don't fully understand what's really holding you back. And like you say, it could be because it's a goal that's not important to you.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. People don't necessarily they don't want. Some people just don't want to, but
Mm-hmm.
other people don't take the time to dig deeper and say, what's the reason behind the reason for me, right? What's the actual,
Yeah.
underlying reasons?
So, something slightly different, but it's been coming up in my line of work a lot. People may be motivated and they may do something and push themselves through emotions because they're not interested in understanding and uncovering what's really going on, but they push themselves through it, and they do it for a lengthy period of time. And what ends up happening is those unresolved emotions that have never been integrated and released and all the rest of that, they kind of boomerang backwards and they hit you in the body.
Hmm.
And that's when you start noticing people, because I've started working with people with chronic pain, because you can start pinpointing from the time that they started noticing this chronic pain what emotions were predominant in their lives that they wouldn't allow themselves to feel because it was uncomfortable, basically. But they were motivated, they were so motivated financially or otherwise that they required them to be motivated about doing something, and they just completely ignored it. Like, they pushed right through it. I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to think about it, I have a goal and I have no choice, I have to get there.
Hmm.
So all those things eventually take root someplace, right? They don't just disappear. And that's why understanding your motivation and what uncomfortable emotions are there becomes that much more important, because it will go back into your body if you don't acknowledge it and release it in a healthy way.
Yeah, and to add on to that as well, that's one thing, right? And you may be doing that with multiple things, and that may
Exactly.
manifest in multiple ways throughout your body. And at a certain point, it becomes really, really difficult to figure out what's going on, right? Like if you think about it in terms of like a medical conversation, you go to a doctor's office and you're saying like, "Oh, I have all these symptoms," and you list like five different symptoms that typically are unrelated. Doctors can be like, "What the hell does this person have?" Because there's so many things going on. And
Mm-hmm.
it'll have to be a situation where they break it down and say, okay, well, you have this going on, this condition, that condition, and all these different conditions together. And I keep thinking about things like comorbidity situations, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
have like someone with diabetes, heart disease, and whatever else can be going on, right? Anxiety, you have all these things going on. Well, guess what? Some of the treatments for those different things actually conflict with each other. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to really kind of figure out where you want to invest your time and energy in those treatments, and it becomes really difficult to treat at that point. So to your point, don't wait till it becomes a comorbidity situation where you have so many different things happening at once. It's really beneficial to you in the short term and long term to really take time and say, okay, what am I really dealing with here? And let's take that time to really deal with whatever's happening effectively and say, is this really what I want to do? Is this my motivation for this really solid, or something that I'm doing it for the wrong reasons and just pushing myself to do this? And am I avoiding it because it's uncomfortable? Don't avoid that discomfort because it's uncomfortable, because that's really how we grow.
So if you had somebody coming to you and they have this goal that they want to accomplish, right? I mean, people come to you as a coach with the goal. How do
Hmm.
you start breaking things down for them to be able to get them in that direction of clarity first, and then how do you, is this the right goal, and if this is not the right goal, let's get to the right goal.
Yeah. So first thing I ask is like, what's behind that goal, right? What makes you want to do this, right? Tell me more about that goal. Tell me more about exactly what you want to do and why you want to do this goal. And then once we dive deeper into that, enough into that, I'll ask them what they've tried before, and if which happens sometimes where people are like, oh well, I haven't tried this, I haven't tried that, and we go through things and they really haven't tried a whole lot. Then I'll
Mm-hmm.
go back to the question of like, what makes you want to do this? Like, are you sure you really want to do this? Because if you have the motivation and you really, really want to do this, and you haven't tried like 80% of these things that are relatively obvious solutions to this problem, then are you really motivated to do this, right? Or sometimes, which also sometimes happens, are you just really early stages in where you're at and just too early to talk about kind of solutions that are outside the box, right? Because if you haven't tried the more obvious things, try those first. There's a reason that they're obvious, is because those are the easy wins, right? If you try those obvious things and you still can't do it, then it might be worth digging a little deeper and seeing what's going on. But my first conversation is always about the why. Like, what makes you want to do this? What's motivating you to do this? What gave you the idea to do this, right? Where does the genesis of this come from? And then once you get that solid down and like what they want to accomplish here, then you can come up with different solutions. And maybe that idea of like, for example, let's say they want to do a podcast, right? Why do you want to do a podcast? Well, I need to get my message out there more. I want to be more public, and I want to get my expertise and be a thought leader out there. Okay, cool. Why podcast though? Why not video cast? Why not just social media conversation? Why not blog posts? Why not guest blog posts? Why not speaking engagements? And sometimes people don't necessarily think about those other things. Like, oh wait, I've never thought about those things. I could actually do that, right? But then why podcast specifically? Well, because I think people listen to podcasts. Okay, which people? Are those your people, or the people you're trying to reach listen to podcasts? And then you dig deeper and figure out that kind of thing. So that's a long-winded answer to your question there in that situation.
Yeah, no, I think those are all very good points for our listeners, because it's about helping you get clear on what the path is and whether you are on the right path. And I'll tell you, so I do it, I guess, a little bit differently. So I talked to somebody who wanted to be a speaker. And she told me that she had a lot of confidence issues related to speaking. And I said, well, have you tried Toastmasters? She's like, yes. And I'm also going to be in a competition in Toastmasters. And, and she insisted confidence was the issue. Confidence was the issue. And so she wanted to work on confidence on herself. But, a few minutes into the conversation, what we actually uncovered, it was fear of rejection. She's a pretty confident person. She does a lot already out there. She puts herself out there in big ways, but it didn't occur to her that it was something slightly deeper or different. And all she's been working on is this one area, when really her focus needs to be more off in this area. And this is, as I say, I work with a coach myself, and this is what he keeps saying. We are not able to see our own blind spots.
Right.
That's why it becomes really important to talk to somebody, and with a caveat on who that somebody is, because especially when it comes to emotional issues, you can't overburden your friends. They're not equipped for it. They're not trained for it, and they probably got a whole bunch of their own crap that they're dealing with as well. And you don't want to be the person that people avoid.
Not only that, but they're also too close to it sometimes. A lot of
Yeah.
times, right? Like, they're
Yes.
invested in your success. They're invested in that.
Yes.
Not that a coach wouldn't be, but a coach is able to take a step back and say, okay, I'm taking emotion out of the situation,
Right.
right? I can remove myself from the situation because I'm not in the situation. You
Mm-hmm.
can't ask the mouse where the cheese is and how to get there because they're in the maze, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it takes someone being on the outside saying, okay, make a right there, go left, go around. Okay, now you're good to go. And like you said, it's really we as coaches live in the world of you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's building awareness around things that you have no awareness of. So you don't even know enough to say I need to learn this, right? It's only through talking to someone on the outside, talking to someone like a coach who's trained, like you said, trained in dealing with emotional situations like that, and to getting people out of their emotions, to be able to say, here's how we can address this. Here's what you might need to explore in terms of what some training opportunities or things like that you can go and learn about, because you may not even know. I was on a podcast earlier. That's what I'm on the way back from, and we were talking about this, and the host of the podcast was talking to me, and we were saying, like, me and this other guy were talking about things that are natural for us, and he was like, just hearing you guys talk, I was like, I'm thinking about a lot of things that I never even thought about before, and this guy's been doing podcasts for like 5-7 years now. and he's getting new ideas by hearing us talk about stuff. That's going to happen, right? Where you don't know what you don't know, and suddenly with someone talking about stuff like, oh wait, I didn't even think about that before. So being able to have those conversations with folks is severely underrated, especially when it comes to situations where it may not otherwise be like a normal thing to do. People don't normalize coaching as a concept, and the folks who do, unfortunately, whether better, a lot of the folks who do that on social media are not actual coaches, are not trained coaches, and they just make it seem like it's a joke, and that tends to water down the brand. I know folks who are amazing coaches who are like, I don't want to call myself a coach because the term coach is associated with such bullshit out there that it ruins the brand. And she was right, honestly. You know what I mean? Like we know that it's not the case, right? We know that coaching is a real thing, but not everyone knows that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But sort of going kind of back to the motivation
Yes.
part, it's always about uh, that is one thing. Whatever your motivation is, just like as you were talking about to your friend who doesn't want to call herself a coach, understanding what that motivation is, understanding where the emotion is. So for example, like Tony Robbins is a coach that has a six-figure, what do you call it, fee, and so coaches range quite a bit, and it's the emotion behind it because there's always going to be a few people, many people, depending on the industry. But here's your point. Where is my motivation bringing you down as far as your thinking? What is it specifically related to your thinking? What excuses are you using? What stories are you saying to justify the status quo?
Right.
And like you said, sometimes it is a matter of prioritizing. And maybe for some people, Drew, you might be one of them, where you like to have your fingers in multiple pies. I, in fact, tell myself on a regular basis, I don't have to pick A and B at a time. I can do A or B. I can do A and B. I'm exactly the opposite. I will not put out a program unless it's like done to death kind of thing. No right, no wrong, but that's just who I am.
Yeah.
And so understanding all of those pieces about who you are help you get to a certain place of clarity where you're like, okay, so this is really what's going on. Now I know how to be able to actually move forward and have some solution around it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought of when you were talking about that just now is your friends are not always going to know. Going back to the friends thing, your friends are not always going to necessarily know or feel comfortable calling you out on your bullshit, right? They're sometimes they're going to be like, oh
They're
yeah,
not
yeah,
your
totally,
friends,
absolutely.
apparently.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean like they're not gonna. Some of them might not feel comfortable because you might be in a situation
Yeah,
where it's really
absolutely.
emotional, and they're like, we don't want to upset this person anymore, so we're gonna co-sign their bullshit in the short term,
Mhm.
not knowing that that's gonna probably not help you in the long term, right? But a coach is gonna
That's
ultimately,
me.
yeah, there you go. So I mean, ultimately, a coach though is gonna be like, no, hey, this is bullshit. You know, you're bullshitting yourself right now. Like how? Like let's break it down. How are you bullshitting yourself right now, and really help you to help yourself talk through
Hmm.
that situation. Because let's be honest, we probably know at some subconscious level at least that we're bullshitting ourselves. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
absolutely. We
And our body
absolutely.
knows that. Like to your point, our body knows that, right? Our minds know that. But we tell ourselves these stories like, oh yeah, I'm just a really bad cook, so I'm just not going to bother trying to cook. Well,
Right.
you're never going to improve if you don't try, right? Like simple as that.
Yeah, and different levels, right? I mean, I'm not aspiring to be a gourmet cook at all. But to go
Yeah.
back to your point about friends, I have decided to make a conscious decision. Close friends are a different story. Okay, I mean, few close friends. I believe they expect some degree of truth from me, and then if they
Yeah.
don't accept it, I'm not gonna push it, right? But there are other people I've come to the conclusion I'm not their coach. They have a very strong. I have presented myself once or twice. They've asked, and I've given them my opinion once or twice. It's not in congruence with their opinion, and I'm
Right.
just not going to coach them. That's not my job. So I'll be just like, okay, whatever you feel is best for you. And I will leave it up at that because I don't intend to. My goal for me then becomes I don't want to engage further in this. I want
Right.
this conversation to be done, and it's up to you to go figure it out. It has as you choose. So you're right. You can't put an unfair burden. And maybe some friends know something, but that's not their job. They may not
Right.
necessarily have the full breadth of knowledge. I mean, there's so many reasons why friends are a great way to get some initial momentum. Like, yeah, you should do it. You're really good at this. You're a baker. You should really consider selling yourself on Etsy or whatever it happens to be. And friends are great in that initial kind of push. But after that, it becomes important for us to start looking at, all right, who really knows about this particular thing that I can really learn from?
Yeah. And that goes along the line of like, target folks with actual expertise in these things, right? You don't want to put someone in an uncomfortable situation where they feel like they have to like, give you some kind of input that they don't have the knowledge to give you, right? Because then you put them in an awkward situation there as well. But I completely agree with you. I mean, there's some friends where I will, I trust them, they trust me, and we'll have a conversation honestly. But most of my friends, most of the people that I interact with, I don't coach them unless
Mhm.
one, if it's a situation where I haven't coached them before or haven't had a conversation with them,
Mhm.
I'll ask them like, just are you telling me this for a reason? Like, do you want me to confide? Do you want me to give you some input, or do you want me to just listen to what you're saying and just ignore and like pretend to to like give you advice? 'Cause I'm not going to give you advice if, there's no point. And I'll leave it in their court. But majority of people that I interact with, I don't coach them unless it becomes a situation where they want me to coach them. Because again, the other part of it's like unsolicited coaching is just kind of a douchey thing to do too. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me tell you exactly what, how I work because I'm awesome and whatever. It's not about that. But back to the motivation thing though, yeah, it's always worth examining why you want to do something or what the value add to your life or someone else's life or to the lives of the folks you serve if you're a business owner, right? What is the value add truly at the end of the day, and what is that worth to you? If it's not worth enough for you to be uncomfortable and have those conversations with yourself and really grow yourself so you can be better at achieving whatever that goal is, it's not worth investing your time into, because you're not going to do it as well as you could if you take the time and say, how can I do this better and better and better, and keep improving on that. And that will require you to be uncomfortable. That will require you to invest time and energy in yourself, in growing yourself and your ability to do that. Even if you're great at what you do right now, you can always be better. And so you have to be able to invest that time and energy and be uncomfortable with it.
I couldn't agree more. It's the things that people don't want to hear. The people who are truly successful in whatever they choose, and I use the word success very broadly, really come to recognize you got to step into those places which are uncomfortable. You got to be able to explore what's holding me back in whichever way, and then be able to say, all right, so as you know, however you want to think about it, like you had a really good point, that was me then, it doesn't have to be today, or whatever modality you choose to be able to get through something. The point is, it still needs to be done if you want to be truly fulfilled with all aspects of it, and not just do it for a financial reason or some other reason that you
Right.
can kind of think of.
I'll tell you one area that really jumps out at me in terms of motivation and people doing things for the wrong reasons is business ownership, honestly,
Mhm.
right? People start businesses for the wrong reasons. I hate my boss. I'm gonna start my own business. Okay, that's a really horrible reason to start a business and quit your job. Like, yeah, you hate your job, hate your boss, get a different job. Doesn't mean you have to be a business owner. Like, being a business owner is really tough, and you wonder why people don't become business owners, start business, and then shut them down because it's hard. It's really difficult to be a business owner in any kind of effective way. You may have the initial response of saying, okay, you know what, I'm getting some clients coming in, that's great, and that first 6 months or a year is great. But then if you don't actually know how to be a business owner, if you don't know how to take that momentum and build on it, you're going to fail after that year because your initial pool of resources of clients is going to run out eventually if you don't try to keep cultivating that. And people don't get that. They think that it's like, oh, it's just a sexy thing to start a business. And you see all these YouTube channels, all these YouTube videos, all these like posts on Instagram, all these things like oh, be a business owner in a week, be a business owner in 2 weeks, take this 2 week course and pay me to be a business owner. It's like, no, you're basically fueling that person's business, not your own.
I was thinking about you actually because state of Maryland sent out an email and they said that they have the last 3 years they've had record applications for starting new businesses.
Hmm.
And so because we had this conversation just 2 weeks ago about what is the reason why people start businesses, right? And we talked quite a lot about, again, your motivation. What is your main reason for doing it? And is this the way that you think you're going to accomplish that motivation? It may not be the right way to accomplish that motivation. And it all goes back to, again, what are the emotions? What are the beliefs we tell ourselves? What are the stories that we tell ourselves? And I'd say 90% of our conversations really come back to this. What are the stories that we tell ourselves,
Yep.
whether we act act or don't act, or whether we acted this way versus that way. It's the stories that we tell ourselves. And are we doing it consciously?
100%, and intentionally too. Right. So awesome. For folks out there listening, how are you? How's this hitting you as you listen to this? Right. What are some stories you're telling yourself that may or may not be effective for you, that may be holding you back? What are some things that you may not you may not have the motivation to actually do, but you're feeling obligated to do, or that you committed yourself to? Comment in the comment section below. Let us know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. How is this hitting you? What are some things that you are either are or are not motivated to do that you want to do? Let us know what you think. And if you like this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Let us know what you think about what we're talking about here. And if you have any ideas for future videos you want us to talk about, let us know. Nahid, anything you want to talk about anything you want to say to close out here as we're running out of time?
No, I think the last words that you use, intention and awareness. Be intentional and aware of what your decisions are and how you're taking action on those decisions.
Awesome. Well, I can't end it any better than that. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Hope you had a great time watching us and listening to what we're talking about, and I hope it was helpful for you. So yeah, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks again, and take care. Have a great rest of the week and weekend, and stay safe.